In this video, we're going to be looking at solving 5-step equations. We have our first equation here, and once again, we're going to be looking at solving using backtracking first, and then solving using inverse operations. So let's start with our backtracking. Now, first of all, the first thing that we are doing to x in this equation is we are timesing by 4. So on our flowchart, it becomes times 4. Then we are subtracting 3. So then we have minus 3. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 2. So times 2. Then divide by 3. So divided by 3. Lastly, we're going to add 9. So now we need to backtrack by using inverse operations and doing them in the opposite order. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to subtract 9, then we're going to multiply by 3, then divide by 2, then add 3, then divide by 4. Now, let's go through with those operations and solve for our unknown variable x. 15 minus 9 gives us 6. 6 times 3 gives us 18. 18 divided by 2 gives us 9. 9 plus 3 gives us 12. And 12 divided by 4 gives us 3. So our solution to this equation is x is equal to 3. Now we're going to solve using inverse operations on our equation. So when we look at our flowchart, we can see that the first thing that we did to undo our equation was to subtract 9. So this is what I'm going to do to both sides of the equation. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides so that I end up with 15 minus 9 on the right-hand side of the equation. Plus 9 and minus 9 will cancel out, and I am left with 4x minus 3 over 3 is equal to 15 minus 9, which is 6. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to multiply both sides by 3. That's what our flowchart was telling us to do. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3 and divided by 3 and times 3 will cancel out. So we're left with 2 times 4x minus 3 is equal to 6 times 3, which is 18. The next thing that we had to do, looking at our flowchart, was to divide by 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 now, and times 2 and divided by 2 will cancel out, and I am left with 4x minus 3 is equal to 18 divided by 2, which is 9. The second last thing we had to do to both sides was add 3. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. Minus 3 and plus 3 will cancel out. So I am left with 4x is equal to 9 plus 3, which is equal to 12. Finally, we had to divide by 4. So we're going to divide both sides by 4 now. Multiply by 4 and divided by 4 will cancel out. 12 divided by 4 gives us 3. So our final solution to the equation is x is equal to 3. The same solution that we got when we solved using our flowchart and backtracking. Okay, let's look at our second example now. If we look closely at the equation, we can see that the first thing that we're doing to a here is we're multiplying by 3. Then we are dividing by 2. Then we are subtracting 6. The next thing that we do is multiply by 4. And then we minus 1. And our answer is 35. Now, to work backwards, we have to add 1, divide by 4, add 6, times by 2, and divide by 3. So now let's work backwards to find A. 35 plus 1 gives me 36. 36 divided by 4 gives me 9. 9 plus 6 gives me 15. 15 times 2 gives me 30. 30 divided by 3 gives me 10. So my solution to this equation is A is equal to 10. So now what we're going to do is we're going to solve the same equation using inverse operations. So when we look at what we did with our flowchart, the first thing that we had to do was to undo the equation was to add 1. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to add 1 to both sides of the equation. Now, minus 1 and add 1 will cancel out, and I am left with 4 times 3a over 2 minus 6 is equal to 35 plus 1, which is 36. The next thing that we had to do was to divide by 4. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 4. Times 4 and divided by 4 will cancel out, and I'm left with 3a over 2 minus 6 is equal to 36 divided by 4, which is 9. The next thing that we had to do was we had to add 6. So that's what I'm going to do to both sides of this equation. I'm going to add 6 to the left-hand side of the equation, and then I'm going to add 6 to the right-hand side of the equation. So we're going to have 9 plus 6. Okay, now minus 6 and plus 6 will cancel out, and I'm left with 3a over 2 is equal to 9 plus 6, which gives us 15. The next thing that I had to do was to multiply by 2. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to multiply by 2 to both sides. Now, divided by 2 and times 2 will cancel out. I'm now left with 3a is equal to 15 times 2, which is 30. The last thing I had to do was to divide by 3. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 3. Multiply by 3, divide by 3 will cancel out, and I'm left with a is equal to 30 divided by 3, which is 10. The same solution that we got when we were solving with our backtracking. Okay, now let's look at this final example. Okay, the first thing that we have to do to our unknown number m here is times by 7. Then we add 1. Then we times by 2. Next we add 3. And then we divide by 11. Now to backtrack, we're going to do the inverse operations. So we've got times 11 minus 3 divided by 2 minus 1 divided by 7. So now let's work backwards to find our solution. 3 times 11 is 33. 33 minus 3 is 30. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 15 minus 1 is 14. 14 divided by 7 is 2. So our solution to this equation is m is equal to 2. So now we're going to solve using inverse operations. Now the first thing that we did in our flowchart to undo the equation was to multiply by 11. So that's what we'll do here. Times 11 to both sides of the equation to keep the equation balanced. Remember, anything you do to the left-hand side of the equal sign, you must also do to the right-hand side of the equal sign. So now we can see that times 11 divided by 11 will cancel out, and I've got 2 7m plus 1 plus 3 is equal to 3 times 11, which is 33. Now, the next thing we have to do to both sides is to subtract 3. So we're going to do that. We're going to minus 3 here and minus 3 on the right-hand side. Now, plus 3 and minus 3 will cancel out. So we're left with 2 times 7m plus 1 is equal to 33 minus 3, which is 30. The next thing that we had to do to undo our equation was to do divide by 2. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. Times 2 and divided by 2 will cancel out, and I am left with 7m plus 1 is equal to 30 divided by 2, which is 15. The second last thing we had to do was to subtract 1. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides of the equal sign. Plus 1 and minus 1 will cancel out, and I am left with 7m is equal to 15 minus 1, which is 14. The last thing that we needed to do was to divide by 7. So dividing both sides by 7, we find that times 7 divided by 7 will cancel out, and I'm left with m is equal to 14 divided by 7, which is 2. Again, the same solution that we had when we solved using backtracking. I hope this has made solving 5-step equations easier. Thank you.